Hello and welcome to the Bpositive Bloodstream, a podcast providing insights, stories and experiences from and for all those affected by acute leukaemia and beyond. My name is Jonjo Rooney and I'm the founder of Bpositive and the host of the Bloodstream. So why a podcast? Well, the one thing I lacked when I was diagnosed with leukemia back in 2006 was hearing from people who knew what it was like to embark on a similar journey to myself. It's my hope that by sharing inspiring interviews from people who've either been affected firsthand in some way by blood cancer or who've had similar experiences that others can resonate with, then we can help support those in need. I want these podcasts to provide help, inspiration and belief to all people. Bpositive is both my blood group and my adopted mantra that I held throughout my treatment. I hope you enjoy our interviews, and if you wish to get in touch with us, then please do so by emailing us at info@bpositive.org.uk, or you can find us on Twitter at b_positive_org.
In this next episode, I wanted to discuss something that I feel was a really pivotal part of my treatment and recovery, and that was the importance of setting goals and making plans. Now, you set goals all the way throughout your treatment. If you're anything like me, you want to get through that next round of chemo, you've got your transplant, you've got your recovery, you've got all these things on a day-to-day basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. You change your plans to suit. But I wanted to focus on things that actually happen outside of your treatment. When you're in that recovery phase and beyond, it can actually feel quite an isolated time, and you can feel quite alone. I found that I probably struggled psychologically more outside of my treatment than when I was during it. There were some dark days, of course, some really, really, really dark days, but I always maintained that I needed a great deal of support personally to help me pick myself up when I was home and when I was outside of treatment. I'd lost that day-to-day care, that support network you have with the nurses, the doctors, the consultants. You're left to your own devices, which is the absolute place you dreamed you'd be. You know, the moment you're diagnosed, you want to go back to yesterday. When you're in the throes of treatment, you want to get through it. You want to come out the other end, of course, and so do all your friends and family. But I do find that personally, I needed to set some goals. I needed to have some things to focus on, and I felt that was lacking when I'd first left treatment, when I was in my phase of recovery. And that's what I wanted to discuss, really. In my early days of recovery and getting my feet back on the ground, I was told this recovery will probably take a year. And this is, by the way, for those of you who don't know or who may not know, I'd had a bone marrow transplant at this point after treatment for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So I was to be really fatigued. Now, when I got sent home, I was advised, in fact I was advised before I'd even had my transplant, that when you get sent home after your transplant, you're likely to need your bed to be on the ground floor rather than upstairs, because you're going to be so fatigued you won't be able to make it up the stairs. If you go to the supermarket, you're going to need your car park, I think you get a blue bay badge. You'll need to park right up close to the doors of the supermarket, so you don't have to walk so far. All these little things you're told. The reality was a bit different, if I'm honest, and I realised that when they give this advice, it's like talking about a side effect. It's a potential. It doesn't mean it's definitely going to happen. For me, I didn't need to sleep downstairs. I made sure I wouldn't. I made sure I got up the stairs, but to be honest, I just wasn't struggling that much that I needed to anyway. I could absolutely get up the stairs, but I did need afternoon naps. It took quite a while to come off my anti-rejection drugs, and I felt fatigued quite a way through that. And I remember having mid-afternoon naps when I was just so tired, and only briefly, and then it picked me back up for the evening. But it was recovery, it was taking time. I didn't have, I always say, I was lucky in the sense that I didn't have certain responsibilities and overheads, like children or a mortgage or even a high pressure job at that point. I didn't have those things. I was living at home with my mum, so I could actually take my time and really pick my next steps pretty carefully whilst taking my time to recover. I knew at this stage, in fact I knew before, during my treatment, that I was not going to go back to my old job. My previous employment were absolutely fantastic with me throughout my treatment, really close-knit group that supported me, and more importantly to me anyway, my mum, throughout that treatment. They were absolutely excellent. I just on a professional stance, I knew I wasn't likely to go where I felt like I wanted to, and I really felt like I needed to inject a sense of passion into what I'm doing now. I mean, look, I was 24 at this point, so I didn't want to waste a moment. And listen, I'm the same now. I don't ever want to waste a moment. I want to pick my path carefully. I want to make sure everything I do counts for me or to people I'm working with, and give my best and share my passion. But I had goals. I wanted to go on holidays. I wanted to get down to London. I wanted to go traveling. I wanted to do all these things. So they were the sort of longer term ambitions. But likewise, throughout your treatment, you want to get through the next step. You want to get through the next round of chemo, as I said, or indeed your transplant. But I definitely wanted to focus on the things that happened post-recovery or during recovery, and how I felt that by setting goals and making plans, it meant I could become the better me, and I could really move forward with this. Because I do think there's a great deal more work that needs to happen with aftercare from people having had cancer. There's an incredible amount of work going into treatment, but when you leave the world of treatment and when you're sent back home, of course it's exactly where you want to be. It's where you've dreamt you'd be, and you're eternally grateful, because obviously not everyone gets that opportunity. But as I said, I felt that I struggled at the time with this. I didn't know which direction I was going to go in. I felt like I was cut adrift to my friends. I felt like I was years behind them. Well, I was years behind them. They were all starting out with their careers, getting on well, doing all these things that I wanted to do, and I started to feel, well, what next for me? And even that day-to-day support from the hospital, I'd lost that. I had to have regular blood tests and close monitoring for Birmingham. They don't just let you run wild after a transplant, but I mean that kind of day-to-day family and network of the hospital kind of felt a bit lost, and I certainly experienced that. But things started to pick up. During my transplant, a lady called Mandy Ross came to visit me, and she spoke about a cancer patients writing group that she'd developed with a handful of different patients. Not all leukemia. I think there was only one guy who had leukemia. There was a lady with cervical cancer, I think a breast cancer patient as well. It was a very small group, and she spoke about it, and I said, well, look, I'll consider it, when I'm better and when I'm on the road to recovery, and if I feel up to it and I'm interested, I'll come along. And I did. And I can't understate just how much it meant to me to be able to pick myself up, go on the train alone. Even going on the train alone, I mean, my mum was probably very nervous of me doing that, because I'm exposed, I'm out in the real world again, and could you get infections and all these type of things. But I had to do it, and I got on the train. I was at no real risk. My immunity was back and strong, and I was recovering, but I could drive myself to Celio, get on the train, go into Birmingham, and meet at the Central Library and do some creative writing. Now, I studied English literature at A-level, and I really, really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it now, reading. And obviously I wrote my journal a lot, so throughout my treatment, which helped. So I was very much open to everything, really, anything that I felt could help me. But apart from just sharing my experience and also chatting to these guides and doing some creative writing, it really was having that bit of control back, that I could get up and do my own thing on a day. It was once a week, but I felt 10-foot. My mum used to remark I'd come back and I'd be in such a great mood and I'd be so happy. And either side of that, I was kind of, the day-to-day when you're recovering, I was still quite down, really. I was kind of feeling a bit lost, yet when I would go to these writing group sessions, I'd feel great. And what I really felt was that I was chasing a sense of achievement. I felt brilliant going and being a part of a team and chatting to these other guys and doing some writing, and coming back and feeling like I've had a productive day. I think it's something we all take for granted, and look, we almost should take it for granted. It's work, isn't it? And it's day to day. But when you've had your life compromised, when you've had leukemia, I think you'd give anything to go back to some kind of normality and feeling like you've got a grip on things and having a purpose for your day. That felt like a sense of achievement. But the poems were getting used. I think we had there was a celebration for 60 years of the NHS, and they wanted to publish a collection of poems from different cancer patients, and ours got chosen, and it indeed got published. But better than that, it got performed around the country to celebrate 60 years of the NHS by professional actors. I'd written one about my consultant at Worcester, Dr. Shafiq. I'd called it The Crush. I haven't got it with me, but if I did, I'd read it out. I will read it out another time if you care or are interested. But it was amazing. I remember being sat in the auditorium in Birmingham on the canal and seeing these professional people perform, these actors performing the show for the NHS, and then my poem being not even just read out, it was acted out. It was amazing, and that sense of achievement absolutely gripped me, and I felt good, and I felt like I was progressing. More importantly, I felt like I was moving forward. Still very young. I hadn't decided what I wanted to do with my career at that point, but I felt like I was moving forward, and I wanted it to be on my terms. And so with that in mind, I went back to college because I needed to think about work. I mean, I wanted to be getting back to work. So I went back in, after university, I had my job, and then I got diagnosed. So I took myself to, I think when I'd started my job, I'd embarked in a couple of courses. I went back to finish them, which actually felt quite strange. Like, to the tutor, he probably hadn't seen me for however long, a year, 15 months, and I've just gone back. Whereas to me, so much had changed for me. But I went back and got that course. I wanted my brain to tick over again, to develop my skills, and just to sort of give myself a good chance of picking myself back up and getting back into work when it felt right. So I did some courses, and even that was great. I had a purpose again. I think that's the overriding feeling for me. I felt like I had a purpose, and I felt like it could keep my mind ticking over. And I was feeling useful again, and absolutely that meant the world to me, to be feeling useful again. I definitely felt lost psychologically after treatment. I had some support from the psychotherapist, of which I'll go into more detail at a different session, because I think it's worthwhile. I think it's a bigger discussion, the importance of that aftercare and psychotherapy and things like that. I mean, it really helped me. So I think I'll probably share that for another time. But focusing on the setting goals and making plans, I felt like I could think about what I wanted to do next in my career, but the more strings I added to my bow, the more flex I would have. I didn't want to waste a second. I felt like I wanted to stay with creativity. I'd studied that. I had a real passion for that. I'd taken photos. I was really into my photography, but I wanted to carry forward with these things. So just by doing courses, it just kind of helped me feel like I was on the straight and narrow a little bit, which really meant a lot. But it wasn't just academically. It was I had a lot of connections with the Birmingham Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and they had, and they still have, their own charity, a great charity called Cure Leukemia, and they do various running. They're a lot bigger now, but at the time they were just starting out, and they did various running events in Sutton Park in Birmingham, and I went along to just hand out medals. I was in no shape. I was still recovering, so I was taking my time to get my fitness back up to scratch. But I went along and honestly handing out medals. I'd urge any of you, if you're having, I don't know, a shit week or bad times, or you're not feeling right, you're struggling psychologically, if you go to any running event that people are doing for a charity, and even if you just cheer, or you hand out a medal, or give out a Lucozade or an orange or water or anything, it may well just make you feel amazing and put things in perspective. I really felt great handing out medals to people who'd ran and tested themselves and had that sense of achievement themselves, but it felt like an achievement for me. I'd get myself out and about and around the Birmingham area, and I was handing out medals, and it really felt great. But I wanted to push myself. I wanted to chase those medals myself. My best friend Bradley had ran the Great North Run, and he'd done it for me. He wrote my name on his shirt saying he was running for me. So I saw people around me and I went up and had an amazing weekend supporting him, and just being on that cheer line, it just showed me everything. I mean, that is the world's biggest half marathon, don't get me wrong, it's no mean feat, and there's a great deal of support, but it was incredible to see. And in my hometown of Bromsgrove, there's an annual leukaemia run from a completely inspiring lady called Nicole Harris and husband Noel who set this up. But every year there's a leukemia 5k and a 10k. I'd been doing a bit of work through my college course with a local gym. I was designing their website for their gym, and I remember speaking to the guy who runs the gym, and I'd mentioned all this Bromsgrove 10k is coming up, and at this point I'd even started getting out and about and just trying a little bit of a run, and just to see, because I was so inspired by watching all these runs. And I remember, and I'll never forget, and it's not really a criticism of his, it was more a moment that kind of stands out, because he said, yeah, you wouldn't be able to do the 10. I mean, he had no knowledge of what I could be capable of, but he just made an assumption. He said, yeah, just do the 5, you won't be able to do the 10. And I thought, absolutely get out of here. I will be doing that 10 if it kills me. And I did. And I trained and I did that 10 with my brother and a couple of friends. And it's a quite a tough 10k, but it was brilliant. I smashed it just by virtue of doing it. I think I got under 2 hours, which was my goal. Under an hour, which was my goal for a 10k. I think 55 minutes or something. It just felt amazing to me. I did it, and I wanted to chase more of this. I'd seen Brad do the Great North Run. I'd gone up to support him. So my next step was, listen, I'm going for the half marathon. So I started picking up, and I started doing things, and I started feeling useful again. Whether it was going to Birmingham and writing a poem, or going to college and doing a course, or doing a run, I was doing it, I was achieving. And that was just for me, completely selfish, but it was just for me to feel good about myself. And I really did. I absolutely loved it. The Great North Run is still to date one of the best events I've ever done, because it was so significant, it was massive, the whole world was watching. I'd had various news coverage actually, with the BBC had covered it, and the local news had covered it, and I was to be featured on the main programme on the BBC, which they did, which was fantastic. It all just started pulling together. I just felt really useful, really purposeful again. I felt like I had a cause. I had something to focus on. Now, I had something to focus on when I was going through my treatment. I wanted to get out of it and get through it. Same for doing a run. Same for doing any of that. It takes preparation. It takes hard work and a lot of grit and determination. And there's similar things. Having gone through and been so lucky to come out the other end of my illness, I was going to work myself to the point where I knew I could get around these runs no matter how hard it would be. I owed that. And if I could raise some money in the meantime, then I'd do that as well. And I started doing that. This led me to running the London Marathon in 2009. So I started doing a lot of these things. They just made me feel alive more than anything. I was meeting different people. I was embarking with different charities. I was feeling important. They were using me as a case study. I was speaking to different groups and things. I just felt fantastic, and it felt great to give back. But one thing I really wanted to do was travel. I've always wanted to do it. I've always loved different cultures, meeting different people, expanding my own social circle, identifying with people from all different walks of life. I've always loved all of that. But due to various treatment I'd had, I was told I wasn't allowed to. Certainly in the first year after your transplant is critical. They want to make sure you're okay. And you get the 100-day marker where they want to see where your cells are at, and you have a bone marrow to test how you're doing. Thankfully that was all going well. But beyond that, it was right, okay. And I was saying all the time, listen, I want to go travel, I want to be able to see the world. And they went, listen, I had no money to do that. I don't know how I thought I was going to do it. But I just wanted away, and I wanted to get out and see the world. And they were like, look, you won't be able to do that for at least 2 years because of risk of various diseases you can get out there, most notably yellow fever. Now, yellow fever disease and this is back 11 years ago, was kind of moving around. It's a disease that moves in various areas. I was always told you won't be able to go to Central Africa at the moment. There's a high risk of yellow fever there. Certain parts of Brazil and South America carry it also. I think that's changed now because, as I say, yellow fever does move and disperse, and it since has. But whilst I had to have a lot of inoculations, generally they couldn't give you an inoculation for yellow fever because they'd give you the illness, and treatment from leukemia and the treatment I'd had meant that I couldn't I couldn't ever embark on that. But I thought, listen, if I don't get to go to Central Africa, I mean, South America would be a big loss because I think it's somewhere I still haven't made the trip over there. But that is now not to do with the yellow fever. I just haven't got round to it. But I was absolutely keen to get myself travelling around the world. Now, after I'd picked up my first job, there was a recession on, so it was typically difficult to get work for anyone in the country. But I'd picked up a local job doing some design work for skincare company, and near to where I lived, and that meant I could start chipping away and getting some savings for me with a plan to get out and about. So I was working during my work. I was going on holidays. I started going on trips because I could go to Ireland to see my dad. I could go abroad to Europe and stuff. I was absolutely fine to do that. I was in the phase of my recovery, and we're now talking 2 to 3 years after my transplant, where I was out of the critical phase, and now I was actually well back into normal life, still being monitored 6 monthly, I believe at the time. It went from a few times a week to every week to every 2 weeks to every month to every 3 months to every 6 months to every year. I'm still seeing once a year, which I'm very pleased about because I want to be, and the team at Birmingham are fantastic. So it's important for me to constantly maintain that relationship with my consultants and have my tests, or my blood tests carried out, which is obviously critical. But I was back on my feet and I was working and I was going places, but I wanted a big trip, and I managed to achieve that in 2010 when I'd saved up enough money. I'd broken up with my then girlfriend, so I was in a position where I actually could start looking at doing this. But the reason I feel I wanted to mention it was that sense of achievement, being the other side of the world. I went to Southeast Asia. I took myself on a 6-month trip, planned it through STA Travel, I think, where I would spend 3 months in Southeast Asia. I mean, taking in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, all these places, and then go over to Australia for 2 months, and then go to New Zealand for a month, then wrap it all up with a week in Fiji. What I would give to be doing that now. But I loved it. But one point really stands out to me. Listen, when I first landed in Bangkok, I was just clean on the booze, having loads of fun with a big gang of people that I sort of teamed up with. So I didn't really stop to think. I certainly didn't stop to pause. Now, ever since I'd recovered, I hadn't really stopped to pause. I was like, well, I've got to get a job, I've got to do this. I've been at the college courses, I was doing fundraising, I was raising money, I'd done a marathon in 2009, I was talking to different leukaemia charities. I was, here, there and everywhere, really building myself back up again. But when I was travelling, it was all just hammer and tongs, smashing it, having absolute brilliant time. But there's one moment, after about 11 days, I took myself out of the chaos of Bangkok and Chiang Mai, and I'd headed up north to a town called Pai, which is absolutely beautiful. And myself and my guys, I was travelling on my own the whole time, but I met up with friends intermittently, and I'd built a bank of friends that I would constantly keep sort of staying in touch with, and they'd be going a similar route, and we'd end up touching base. But for parts of it, we were together, and we'd gone to Pai, we'd rented some motorbikes, and we went up to scale a waterfall. And it was when we were doing that, as myself and a really good friend of mine, called Scott, we were at the top of this waterfall. It's one that he spectacularally stacked it and fell down as well, which I honestly thought I saw him die, but he didn't. He came out the other end. But because of the algae on the waterfall, I mean, this was natural. Do you know what I mean? There was no one there manning this. We were just slipping and sliding everywhere. But thankfully he made it. But in fact, I think it was the time he was at the bottom at this point. I was just sort of sat in this natural pool, having scaled up these mountains, or hills rather, where the waterfalls were, and I was sat in this natural pool in like the most natural water, overlooking these rice fields, and I just had sort of a moment of reflection, and what seemed like the whole landscape around me. I was in Thailand, I was doing it on my own, I was sat in a natural waterfall looking out to these rice fields. I just had the moment where I might have even said it out loud, but I just patted myself on the back and allowed myself to sort of say, well done. It was a big moment for me, but it felt that I kind of, for the first time, I'd stopped still after my treatment. I probably welled up a bit. I think I did, but I felt like I was achieving life. I felt like I was back and I was doing it for myself and for all those who sadly couldn't fulfill their own dreams. A dream of mine was to go around the world, and I was doing it. And in doing that, I really felt that I had a future, I think, and that I could, and then I could push on and achieve my goals. But it was a really defining moment for me. Yeah, I mean that really stands out in my mind. Straight after travelling, I'd come back. I'd moved straight down to London. My relationship had got put back on track for London, so we, myself and my ex-girlfriend, had decided to pick things back up. So I was back in London. But again, that was a goal for me. I always wanted to be in London. I wanted to be where it was at. I mean, before I was diagnosed, when I was working, all my friends from university were down in London. I just felt like I'd missed that, and I was envious of that. And it's a horrible thing to be envious, but I felt like I was missing out. Now, I was someone who's massively social and don't like missing out on things and like to be at the centre where the fun's at. So moving to London felt a really, really big moment, and that's continued. To be able to move to London after travelling, and to be able to chase work and to work for top brands, and to be finding myself working in offices overlooking the Thames and just being a part of something and being important again and getting my feet back on the ground. It took years, but I got there and I felt like I was doing it. And listen, I'm by no means saying, look, I've made it. I'm not. I still don't really know what I want to do. But what I do know is that I'm going to chase it. I'm going to chase happiness, and I'm going to chase what I think is right for me to do. I don't want to waste my time. If a job appeals, I'm going to chase it. If I start falling out of love, then I'm going to move on. But to be in London felt like a really big achievement, and to be surviving here and to be living here and working here felt absolutely great. I'd run another marathon in 2012, and again I fell in love with that sense of achievement. But that sense of achievement absolutely carries forward. I'm now lucky enough that I've got my own house in London. That again feels like a big achievement. I'm doing things that I'm kind of setting myself little goals when I'm down here. And yeah, and I don't think that's ever left me since I left hospital. So no matter how small it is, whether it's just getting on a train to go and join a cancer patients writing group, I just felt that it didn't matter how small that was. If it felt good and if I felt a sense of achievement and accomplishment, then I was going to keep doing it. And I live by that still now. I still want to go and travel. I still want to go and see more places. I still want to chase opportunities. And then your goals start changing. Your life starts changing. You start getting older. But that quest for accomplishment, I don't think should ever leave. And I think that thirst for achievement, I think is key to perhaps to happiness, or certainly my own happiness. But that started right back in hospital. So to kind of wrap this up, I suppose I'm saying, listen, I felt utterly lost at times after my treatment. I'd gone from such close care to being left totally alone, and to have to almost pick your own life up. Of course, you've got your family, your friends, all the support behind you, but you've got to pick yourself up and move forward. You owe it to everyone who's not lucky enough to get through the illness in the first place. Because I do feel tremendously lucky that I was given the opportunity to do that. I didn't want to waste a second for myself. I didn't want to waste it on behalf of everyone else, and also my family and friends who'd willed me to this point. But I did struggle, and I do think the aftercare needs looking at. But psychologically, I just was trying to work things out, and I would have tremendous dips, some really dark days, even though I was well and getting healthy. But I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to turn. I'd come off this conveyor belt, and no one was looking after me every single day like they were in hospital, because that just isn't the reality. But I had to work it out. Ultimately, I knew I wanted to travel the world, get back to work, get some money, meet some new people, experience new cultures. I knew I had to wait. So in picking up new skills at college and feeling that sense of catching up with people, I was a few years behind people in my life. I'd lost maybe 2.5, 3 years from people my age, from my friends. But I knew I wanted to focus on getting a job that suited me more creatively and would provide a backbone for my career. Taking photos as well, all the time as much as possible back then, learning, doing more design skills, working in design teams, letting that creativity spill out of me. Creativity that I'd embarked on through the Cancer Patients Writing Group. It all sort of comes together. But ultimately I felt that by having goals allowed me a continual purpose. And aside from wanting to travel, I wanted to continually raise money and awareness for charities, to bring home the message of leukemia, to share my own story where I could, to establish Bpositive, to push Bpositive. That's a massive goal of mine, and to keep pushing for that, and to keep raising awareness for support that's needed for people who need it once they come out of any kind of illness, let alone just leukemia. But I feel the key message is to chase what makes you feel alive. Real life will absolutely get in the way with work and various obstacles that we have in the day-to-day life. But I wanted to make sure that I picked my work carefully, so I wasn't wasting any opportunities. I didn't ever want to feel like I was wasting my time. I wanted to grab life by the scruff of the neck and really live it. And to this day now, I'm making ambitions all the time, big and small. And it's those ambitions and that sense of accomplishment that fills me with happiness in trying to achieve them. Listen, that could be something from going for a run at lunchtime. I get a sense of accomplishment from it. Not that I doubt that I can do it. I do it regularly, or going to the gym. It's the feeling I get in doing it. And if something makes you feel great, then it's probably the right thing to push for. And I found that's definitely the case for me, big and small. Every time I go abroad or go to a new country, I just get this buzz and this sense of happiness that I know that I trace back to when I was in treatment. I think it would have been the same anyway, but I certainly feel that I try my best to appreciate it as much as possible. I don't sit and dwell on my illness. I don't sit and think, oh God, I'm still lucky. I just don't do it, because I'm living. I do appreciate it when I sit in moments like this and reflect, or when I come across patients who are at the start of their treatment. And yes, I do take time and I feel like I'm lucky to be here. But what I'm committed to doing is continually chasing my ambitions and I suppose chasing happiness and setting goals and making plans, as I did to get through my treatment, as I did when I was coming out of my treatment, and as I continue to do now. From leaving the hospital and travelling the world, moving to London, buying my own house, it is a great feeling to have goals to achieve. And it's during those dark days throughout my treatment, when it was my quest just to absolutely go out and live life, it was those days that really carried me through the darkest moments. I feel that it's important to have a focus, and I absolutely I aim to continue to do that, and chase happiness and satisfy my ambitions and chase my goals where I can. Thank you for listening.